For most of modern history, there was a simple formula. Work hard, stay disciplined, be patient, and eventually, things improve. A better salary, a promotion, stability, respect. That formula shaped school systems, parenting advice, corporate culture, and even national identity. Hard work wasn't just a virtue, it was a contract. And for many people, it worked. But today, something feels different. People are working longer hours than ever. They're answering emails at night. They're collecting certifications. They're switching jobs strategically. They're building side projects. And yet, many feel stuck. Income grows slowly, if at all. Promotions take longer. Housing feels further away. Job security feels fragile. Even high performers feel replaceable. So what changed? Did ambition disappear? Did discipline decline? Did standards drop? Or did the system itself evolve? Because if millions of people across different industries and countries feel the same tension, it's unlikely to be a coincidence. It's unlikely to be laziness. And it's unlikely to be a generational flaw. When an outcome changes at scale, the incentives behind it usually changed first. Hard work didn't vanish, but the environment that once rewarded it predictably may no longer operate the same way. To understand why hard work no longer guarantees success, we have to examine what that guarantee was built on in the first place, and what replaced it. In the mid to late 20th century, much of the developed world operated under a relatively stable economic structure. Large industrial firms dominated, manufacturing was central, national markets were more protected, skilled labor was scarcer, and careers were linear. You entered a company. You stayed. You advanced over time. The implicit agreement was clear: if you showed up consistently, built competence, and demonstrated loyalty, the organization would invest in you. Promotions were often tenure-based. Raises were steady. Productivity gains translated into wage growth across broad segments of the workforce. From roughly the post-war period through the late 1970s, productivity and wages moved together. As workers produced more value, their compensation rose alongside it. Hard work worked because three conditions were present. First, labor was relatively scarce compared to capital expansion. Companies needed workers to scale. Second, skills were less globally interchangeable. A factory worker in one country wasn't competing directly with someone thousands of miles away in real time. Third, organizations optimized for stability. Long-term employment reduced hiring and training costs. Loyalty was economically efficient. Under those conditions, effort compounded. Not because the system was morally designed to reward effort, but because rewarding effort aligned with business incentives. If a company needed to retain skilled labor, increasing wages made sense. If training was costly, promoting internally made sense. If markets were expanding domestically, stable employment made sense. Hard work wasn't magic, it was economically aligned. But that alignment depended on a specific structure: limited global competition, slower technological change, and a stronger connection between labor productivity and worker bargaining power. As those conditions shifted, the reliability of the hard work contract began to weaken. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually enough that most people continued operating under an outdated assumption. And when a contract changes quietly, the people following the old rules are often the last to realize it. Over the past several decades, productivity continued to rise. Technology improved. Software scaled operations. Automation reduced manual constraints. Global supply chains increased efficiency. The average worker today produces significantly more output than a worker several decades ago. But wage growth for many roles did not rise proportionally. This is often described as a decoupling. Productivity increased, but median wages flattened relative to output gains. Why? Because the distribution of value changed. As technology advanced, capital became more powerful. Software platforms could scale without proportional increases in labor. Intellectual property could generate revenue across global markets. Financial markets prioritized shareholder returns and quarterly performance. In that environment, Productivity gains increasingly flowed toward capital owners and highly leveraged roles, not necessarily toward average wage earners. This wasn't a moral shift, it was an incentive shift. If a company can increase output through automation rather than hiring, investing in automation becomes rational. If global competition allows labor cost arbitrage, firms pursue it. If markets reward margin expansion, leadership optimizes for efficiency. Hard work still increases individual output, but when output is captured primarily by systems rather than individuals, the relationship between effort and compensation weakens. In simpler terms, you can work harder inside a system that captures most of the value you create. The problem isn't effort, it's leverage. In earlier eras, individual effort had more direct bargaining power. Today, bargaining power depends more on scarcity and system position than raw output. That's why two people can work equally hard, even equally intelligently, and experience radically different outcomes. Because in modern economies, the structure determines how value flows. And effort alone doesn't control that structure. At the same time productivity scaled, access to education expanded dramatically. More degrees, more certifications, more professional training, more global connectivity. From one perspective, this is progress. Education became more accessible, more people entered knowledge work, barriers lowered. But when supply increases faster than demand, differentiation becomes harder. In many white-collar industries, there are now far more qualified candidates than senior roles. Global remote work widened the competitive field. A company hiring for a digital role may consider talent from multiple continents. That changes the economics of effort. When labor is abundant, individual hard work becomes the baseline expectation, not the differentiator. You're expected to work hard. You're expected to be competent. You're expected to upskill. The floor rose, but the ceiling did not expand proportionally for everyone. As a result, success increasingly depends on positioning rather than effort alone. Signaling becomes critical. Visibility matters. Network access matters. Brand matters. This can feel unfair, but again, it reflects supply dynamics. If many people can perform a role adequately, companies optimize for cost and flexibility. Loyalty becomes less economically necessary. Replaceability increases. In that environment, working harder at a role that many others can perform does not guarantee upward mobility. Effort without scarcity creates stability at best, not exponential growth. And because modern professionals are often competing globally, even strong performance may simply maintain position rather than elevate it. Hard work hasn't lost value, but its relative scarcity has declined. And in markets, scarcity is what drives premium outcomes. Another critical shift is where value accumulates. In industrial economies, value was closely tied to labor input. More workers often meant more output. In digital economies, value concentrates in systems. Platforms scale. Networks compound. Algorithms distribute. Automation replicates effort instantly. A small team can now serve millions. A single software product can replace entire departments. Distribution channels favor those who control attention and infrastructure. This creates asymmetric returns. A small number of highly leveraged roles capture disproportionate value: founders, platform owners, highly specialized experts, or those controlling distribution. Meanwhile, many supporting roles become modular and interchangeable. Inside these systems, hard work matters, but only if it's applied to a leveraged position. Working extremely hard in a low-leverage role may produce incremental growth. Working moderately hard in a high-leverage position may produce exponential outcomes. That's not a reflection of personal worth. It's a reflection of scalability. The modern economy rewards amplification. Code that scales globally. Content that distributes instantly. Capital that compounds automatically. Labor that does not scale linearly struggles to compete with systems that do. So when people say, hard work doesn't pay off anymore, what they often mean is, hard work in non-leveraged contexts compounds slowly compared to system-driven returns. And as system-driven returns become more visible through technology, startups, online platforms, the contrast becomes psychologically sharper. It's not that effort stopped working. It's that effort is no longer the primary driver of outsized outcomes. Leverage is. Hard work still matters, but it is no longer sufficient on its own. In the modern economy, effort acts as fuel, not as direction. Fuel matters. Without it, nothing moves. But fuel poured into a system that doesn't scale produces heat, not momentum. Success now tends to emerge from a combination of factors: scarcity, leverage, positioning, visibility, control over distribution. Effort amplifies these factors. It does not replace them. That means two people can work equally hard and experience entirely different results depending on where their effort is placed. One works inside a constrained structure with limited upward mobility. The other works inside a scalable system with compounding returns. The difference isn't discipline, it's structure. And that structural awareness is what many traditional career narratives overlooked. They emphasized character traits, persistence, grit, resilience. Those traits still matter, but without system awareness, they may lead to exhaustion rather than expansion. The critical shift is this. Instead of asking, "Am I working hard enough?" the more relevant question becomes, is this effort positioned where value compounds? Because in today's economy, effort is common, leverage is not. This structural shift explains why many professionals feel a quiet frustration. They followed the rules. They achieved the credentials. They maintained performance. But the returns feel smaller than expected. This doesn't mean the system is broken. It means the system evolved. The traditional path optimized for stability. The modern path optimizes for adaptability and leverage. Careers are less linear. Tenure matters less than impact. Visibility can matter as much as competence. Skill stacking often outperforms single-track specialization. Those who understand system incentives can reposition. Those who rely solely on effort may experience stagnation. This can create psychological tension. Because working harder feels controllable. Repositioning feels uncertain. Yet ignoring structural change doesn't restore the old contract. It simply prolongs misalignment. The discomfort many feel isn't personal inadequacy. It's the recognition that the rules shifted, quietly. And when rules shift, the skills required to navigate them shift too. Not toward manipulation. Not toward shortcuts. But toward awareness. Understanding where value concentrates. Understanding how technology reshapes roles. Understanding which skills create leverage. Hard work still builds competence. But competence alone is no longer rare. Strategic placement is. Hard work didn't disappear. It didn't become irrelevant. And it didn't stop mattering. What changed is the environment in which it operates. In earlier eras, effort aligned naturally with upward mobility because systems were structured that way. Stability rewarded loyalty. Scarcity rewarded skill. Productivity rewarded wages. Today, the system prioritizes scalability, efficiency, and global competition. That doesn't make hard work obsolete. It makes it conditional. Effort without leverage sustains. Effort with leverage compounds. And understanding that distinction may be one of the most important career skills of the modern era. Not because it guarantees success, but because it aligns expectations with incentives. When people say, hard work no longer guarantees success, they're recognizing a structural truth. Guarantees require stable systems. And modern economies are dynamic systems. So perhaps the question isn't whether hard work works. Perhaps the better question is, where does it work now? Because in a world shaped by technology, networks, and scalable systems, effort alone doesn't determine direction. It determines acceleration. And acceleration only matters if you're pointed somewhere that compounds. Hard work still fuels movement. But systems decide the trajectory. And understanding that may be the difference between exhaustion and momentum.